Our guest today is Bobby Olsen. He is a sophomore here at Oklahoma State. He's a management major like me, but he is concentrating in sports management. Bobby, can you tell me how that is different than like what my management degree looks like?
So basically the first 2 years, it's pretty much the same. Just kind of like your gen eds and your basic management classes, accounting, things like that. Once you get into like your third year, you start really concentrating on what management looks like from a sports standpoint. It's a lot more competitive. It's you're a lot more in the spotlight. So you really got to be honed in on your people skills and the way you present yourself, what you say. That's really the big difference, is just how competitive it is. It's more about networking and who you know than kind of going to a job fair and interviewing or looking for an internship. That's really the big difference.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy.
Well, because like I picked management because I knew it would kind of open a lot of doors, like a really wide amount of doors, and so you've kind of taken the wide doors and narrowed it down quite a bit.
For sure. It's completely opposite. Because sports management, a lot of people want to work for like the NFL, the NHL, NBA, like a professional team, or even the college level for the Big 12 or whatever. But you can't. That's really, really, really competitive. So what people don't get is like sports management. Yes, it's competitive. You have to put more effort in. You have to network more. But you don't have to start there. You can start even at a high school level, at a rec center, the YMCA. That still kind of entitles sports management. So like I say, it's more competitive, and that's true. But there's still options. It's just people really, really, they go in with lofty goals, big expectations, and those are kind of, you got to start somewhere. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense, though. You want to shoot high, but that is a question I have is, what is a sports manager? I'm sure that's not an actual job title.
So,
right?
Okay. So technically, you can be, not a sports manager, but you can manage a club, or you can manage a team. There's only 32 NFL teams, so there's 32 managers, I'm not expecting to go manage the Atlanta Falcons, but it can also deal with ticket sales, maybe marketing, basically any managerial. Does that sound right? Any setting like that. So any opportunity to manage anyone specific to a sports related field, and that doesn't even have to mean the NHL or the NFL or like NBA. That can mean maybe just the stadium where they play. So yeah, you're managing football on Monday, but there's still concerts on a Tuesday or on a Thursday. That can still entitle sports management, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah.
So you still have a focus on sports, but that's not all you'd be doing,
Right. So it's kind of like the business operations of a sports team.
Yeah, for sure. It's not, like a sports manager, you're managing a football team. Those people are more going to focus on scouting, finding players, making decisions, working out contracts for players you already have, things like that. But that's not all a sports major could do, if that makes sense. A lot of opportunities, and like I said, marketing, ticket sales, I guess that's still sort of marketing, but a more specific category of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the management classes that we've both taken so far, we've learned kind of a little bit about like the C-suite. Is that a term you're familiar with? That's just like that corporate level management.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got like frontline managers, middle managers,
and then top.
C-suite, top managers.
Yeah.
What do the top managers look like of a sports organization?
So the top managers of a sports organization is kind of like I said earlier. There's 32 NFL teams or however many NBA teams. Those are like the people who are the big names. You know them. You see them in the news. Like you see it in ESPN. Like, oh, this person's signing this person as a general manager. That's who I sort of think of as a top manager for sports. And I guess you could include the manager of, P&G Park in North Carolina, or, Staples Center in LA. Those are still top managers. It really just depends on where you want to concentrate in the sports industry. And the middle managers is, obviously anyone under them. So next man up or like a second in line. Kind of like the Steelers are talking about hiring them. He would be a middle manager, and then so on and so on. So
Okay, so a sports. I keep calling it a sports organization. I'm not sure if that's the
I
right
mean
term,
that
but
word is general term. There's lots of sports to manage.
sure. With a sports organization, it's kind of interesting because is is the position that is comparable to CEO, would that be the owner or the general manager?
So this, I would say the CEO is more like the owner,
Mm-hmm.
and the manager, at least from a scouting perspective, is more that he's more sports oriented than the owner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, the general manager will have say on some financial decisions, maybe contracts, things like that for players. But the CEO, what we think of it as a CEO, is more closely resembling the owner,
Yeah.
I would say.
Which is weird because like in a traditional business organization, a CEO is like kind of running everything and they have a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
knowledge, and it seems like the owners of sports teams a lot of time just are kind of
And that's, I mean, that's
wealthy
sort of the
people.
same. That's sort of the same because you look at Jerry Jones of the Cowboys. He has a big say in who they sign. Like he gives his input whenever he can. He's at training camps and practices and all of that sort. But you look at some other like managers or not managers, CEOs of or owners of teams, and they might not be as involved. They're really just kind of a figurehead for they just own them. They kind of mind their business, let it run its course. So it really just depends on the organization too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, with a sports management degree, what is your dream job? Are you one of the people that's shooting for the NFL or?
So working in the NFL would be super cool. Um, Obviously, my goals aren't as high as being a manager of a team, but I would really like to maybe not work for a team, but work for example, Next Gen Stats. They are ran through Amazon. And what they do is they look at really, I don't want to say like specific stats because they aren't like those silly stats you see on Instagram where some player scored this many points with a left shoe off or something like that. But they look at the really cool stats. They like maybe possibility of catching a pass, a contested pass, or chances of getting a throw off, really specific stats like that. And they're really cool. And they also work with, they also work a lot with like the safety of the players. So they can really look at the stats for, I mean, I mentioned like in-game stats, but they also do a lot of maybe looking at how many players get concussions, what helmets they're wearing, positioning on the field, if that plays an effect, maybe the play they ran, things like that. So you're not working for a team per se. You're working for the entirety of the NFL. But I think it'd be really cool to work in that department to look at maybe a more data-driven position.
Yeah. So you would be among the people that are compiling that data, right? Is that kind of like?
So I would love to do that, and I think what in a perfect scenario is maybe yes, it's kind of fun to sift through the data and kind of come to conclusions. But what I really enjoy is kind of laying it out in a way that's comprehensible. So really designing a way to present that data to people, help people understand that. And you see that a lot with the commercials. They make it really easy. It's like show a highlight, different angles. They have this % chance of doing it. But I think it'd be cool not only do that, but like even present it to companies like Rydell. They make helmets. Shut. They also make a really, really safe helmet. Being able to present that to those companies and say, listen, this is the conclusion we came to from, this many concussions, this many ACL injuries. Like, what can you do to improve this? This is what we liked about your past designs, things like that.
So who else would be looking at the data that gets compiled then?
So it really depends. Like I said, they do a lot. They focus on a lot of things. Like I said, injuries and then in-game stats. So maybe, also another thing, sports betting. Those stats come in big for sports betting, and they have their predictions for like, you saw it in the NBA finals like last year. They said it's a really ridiculous stat, but they said Chris Paul has never won or has won so many games and lost this many games because or when this ref is refereeing the game, and he ended up being the ref for the Game 7 finals. So sports betting is a really big thing. Like if you can hone in on those odd stats that no one looks at, like this player averages this many points, but when this ref's reffing, he only wins 10% of his games. Like that would be really, really cool to focus in on that and see like people who are really into sports betting who would actually pay attention to that. Those are some fun stats to kind of I want to say unwrap.
Yeah, that does sound really interesting. Like I don't know how. So actually, can you tell me how sports betting works?
Okay.
Because I know there's probably a very casual end of the spectrum where like I would just be like, I bet this team's gonna win $20.
I would say I'm not super into sports betting. I've never been to any kind of gambling, and you can't even gamble in Texas, which is like you can't sports bet in Texas, which is how am I supposed to get into it if I can't do it, But basically, what I understand from my sports knowledge is you can basically bet on anything. Like you have your basics, like this player is going to score the first basket, this player is going to catch the first touchdown, this player is going to throw this many touchdowns. But then you get your really, really odd ones, like the coin toss is going to be heads. Like that's something you can bet on. That's why would you bet on that? But you can, 50-50 chance still. I bet OBJ is going to come out wearing blue cleats for the Super Bowl instead of white cleats. Like things like that. You can bet on some crazy specific stuff and win some pretty large amounts of money.
So what systems exist then to match people up? Because obviously if you're betting, right, you have two people that are making like a crazy bet, right?
Like obviously there's lots of services to bet through. So like DraftKings. I think the NFL has an app too. You have all these apps where you can place bets through, and they just kind of pop up. And a lot of them, like to get you to bet and to get you into it, they say, we'll give you $60 to place on any bet you want at our expense. Like you're not going to get charged. But normally the ones they offer is like really simple. Like the score is there's going to be 2 touchdowns scored. Okay, that's probably going to happen in an NFL game, right? You win $2, $3, $4, and then you're kind of hooked on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
if you're willing to be like Odell Beckham Jr. walks out in blue cleats.
Oh yeah.
Not white. Someone out there could maybe see a bet where you kind of put that out there, and they're like, I think he's going to walk out in white, and then they kind of take that.
I don't think they'll see your bet, because that's kind of your bet. But you can definitely see on like there's obviously there's lots of social media. So you have betting accounts. Bleacher Report has one, BR Betting on Instagram. They post a lot of those odd kind of bets. And then you have just like TV. Find it on ESPN, like who you should bet for, or things like that. Like people's like analysts, their predictions, and you get those specific bets. And while not a lot of people will bet for something stupid like that, there's obviously someone that's going to go, well, I think he's coming out with white cleats, And then that's like it because it's so specific, and like that like I said, the odd stats. Well, people can go, well, he wears cleats that are blue 80% of the time. So you know what I mean? I think he's gonna come out with white cleats. You're gonna win more money. It's such a ridiculous I didn't think of,
Yeah. Yeah. So those statistics though, so you can do an amount of research that makes some bets safer than others.
Oh yeah, like it depends.
Even some of those crazy ones.
So it depends how much you want to brush the surface of like betting, or if you want to take a deep dive into like what you can bet for and how much you want to really research it. Because if you're just kind of casually doing it, you're not going to go bet on what tie he's going to wear for pregame. You know what I mean?
Right.
You probably don't care. You don't even know. But I mean, people will make sports betting like a profession,
Right.
Like that can be a risky profession, but it can be a profession where you look back and you go, well, he posted this, and this on Instagram. They showed this bit of it, like pre-game, film, them walking into the stadium, I can make a decent prediction thinking he's going to wear this color. You know what I mean? So it really depends on like how much you want to really invest both money and time into like your research
Right.
for sports betting.
So is it kind of comparable a bit to the stock market where it's like you can kind of casually throw your money at some big companies and some like easy, some safer bets, or you can get really into the nitty gritty of like
Yeah.
this company's going to come out with their Q3 earnings, and I heard their CEO had or something,
Oh
any
yeah.
number of numbers that you could look at.
100%. 100%. Because like if you just want to be like basic, so we're talking stock market, you want to be really basic and yeah, I'm going to invest just a little bit of money in Amazon, a little bit of money in McDonald's. Like those are kind of safe bets,
Mm-hmm.
You can leave those there. They'll probably be fine, Or you can go do your research and say, I can make a prediction that this company is going to pop off, This company is going to make me some big money. I'm going to throw all my resources that way. You can do the same for betting.
Mm.
It really depends because you can make small bets, It's like buying a lottery ticket. I can go buy a $2 ticket. Maybe I'll win $1. I can go buy a $20 ticket, win $50,
Mm-hmm.
It's really, like I said, and yeah, stock market's a good comparison where you can devote as much as you want to it.
Mm-hmm.
As you really need to or want to,
Right. And that generally, the more you kind of put into it, the more you understand how it works.
Yeah,
And what numbers are good to look at, because I assume that's part of it.
Yeah, like you have your plus and minuses and stuff, and you can also, like I said, you can do your simple one. Oh, they're gonna throw this many touchdown passes, or you can actually get really complicated, and you can go. There's like if you want to be crazy, right? 32 NFL teams, 16 games going on, right? You can try to predict who's gonna score the first touchdown of all 16 games, make or break. So if you get the first 15 correct, you're looking real good. That 16th game comes on Monday night, and that person that you predicted would catch the first touchdown doesn't, that's it.
Right.
You're done. But if he catches that pass, your $100 bet can easily become $25,000. Like that. And you got to be perfect,
Right.
But it's possible. You see it all the time in like sports news. I
Yeah.
see it probably every week. This man has this much parlay. He's one off. He needs 100 yards and he gets this much money. Crazy stuff like that.
And so in that scenario, who pays? Who pays that 25,000?
I want to say, see, here's the thing. I want to say the betting company, almost like a casino. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you have like the ad on, I think it's CBS. Terry Bradshaw, he's an ex-Steeler player. He had a lot of money, rich dude, wealthy man. But they have this ongoing promotional where you join their betting app. The kind of the slogan is "Win Terry's money." So I don't know how true that is. I really doubt Terry Bradshaw is just giving away millions of dollars when he's 70 years old,
right?
Ex-NFL player for 40 years. He don't got that much money saved, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, but if it is like a casino, like you say, then he's probably making more than he would ever be losing. Because that's what's interesting though is a casino, it's mostly luck or rigged.
Yeah,
like it's really they've engineered it so that the house does always win. With sports betting, it seems like that would be less likely for them to just rig it as much as casinos.
That's where it kind of relates to the stock market. It's completely driven by the fans, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Same with anyone that's investing. They kind of decide. Like you can say, "Oh, the stock market crashed," but it crashed for a reason. It's the people who invested.
Right.
So same for sports betting. It's who's betting, how much bets are going towards one person, combined with what the media, the news, social media has to say about said bet. And like that's why most of the basic ones, like I say, you're not going to earn a lot of money because it's really easy to predict. It's not really a gamble per se,
Mm-hmm.
But the crazier ones where people really do have their input, they really are that unpredictable. That's why it's such a big gamble,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why so few people do it. So it's like I said, it's like the stock market where it's completely driven by the people willingly giving their money to said party,
Yeah. Well, and it's probably just the same principle of bigger risk, bigger reward.
Yeah, and the sports app could, I guess, sort of funnel people towards a direction, if that makes sense. Like they can advertise the safer bets and kind of they can minimize their losses. Because it's really just an exchange of money at that point. They can minimize their losses, but like it's not like a casino where you can rig it.
Right.
But it's definitely, it's almost like they have it down to a science to where they really won't lose money.
Yeah. And I assume that they're using the statistics to get there, to get.
Oh
to
yeah, for
have
sure.
it.
They have probably data scientists who look at the most ridiculous things, like not just in marketing, but like each individual sport, like even social media analysts probably look through all of their stuff, any NFL player stuff. So it's very, very, I bet it's very data driven, like even more
Yeah.
than the betting itself.
Yeah.
Because you have to be confident that you are right before even the better's right.
Right.
So, and
Now-
that's a team effort.
Yeah. When you look at these numbers, how can you tell what is essentially just coincidence and what is actually a pattern? You know what I'm saying? Like if Chris Paul wins 10% of his games when that ref is on, is that just a coincidence that he happens to play better teams, or
So-
his player or other team members have been out and injured and so he doesn't, more just a coincidence, or is it actually, can you track it to more of a fact?
So, I feel like it's both, because I'm sure that, like, it could be also just a personal thing. Like, he sees that ref on the court, he's like, like, that's raps, that's it. But it could also be, like you said, injury. There's a multitude of things that could play into it, and like
Right.
I don't know enough about it. That's just a random thing that I remember. Like 10% might not even be correct. This is a year and a half stat.
Sure, just an example though.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. But like it's a multitude of things. You can't really you can't say one thing.
Right. One statistic on its own is not going to tell you whether or not it's
No.
a pattern or a coincidence.
No, and I'm like, in some ways I want to say it's a pattern, just because it's happened so much. It's happened multiple teams. It's the same ref every time. It's normally a scenario where the game is, I don't want to say messy because it's not like no one's getting punched. It's not a dirty game, but like just a competitive game.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say, I want to say it's a pattern, because it's happened so much. If it happened like, if this 10% came from 5 games played, like maybe it's not a pattern, but this has happened his entire career.
Right.
So like at that point, I mean, this man he's years away from retirement.
Right.
He's like, he's just about to retire. So I'd say it's a pattern in this case, but you can't confidently say this is a pattern.
Right. So prevalence is what you're saying is a factor
Yeah.
among however many, hundreds potentially of other factors that would let you know, I guess, the merit of a statistic. Because statistics are interesting also because it's like, if you average out all people, every person has one testicle, right? That's like my favorite statistics joke.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so like statistics just being somewhat fixed, but also somewhat able to be manipulated.
Yeah, and that's like, so when you look at statistics specifically in like the sports kind of world, you kind of have 2 types of statistics. So you have your in-game stats, and those are really simple. Like that's a fact. Like you can look at the game and go, Russell Wilson went 15 for 25 for passes.
Right.
Threw 2 touchdowns. He's averaging this many this year, Like that's a fact. You can't argue with that. And then you have the extreme other side, sports betting, where you can look at these kind of nitpicky stats and kind of make predictions, but they're not necessarily like fact. They're not set in concrete, So and then there's the kind of your middle ground, you see in like your dumb sports posts on ESPN where they have this person did this, and this, first player to do it in the first 6 games, Yeah, it's a fact, but it's really nitpicky. Like,
Yeah.
you're kind of, you know what I mean? So there's kind of it's on a wide spectrum.
Right. Well, what's interesting, I feel like you kind of just created a spectrum between like sports bettors on one side and sports managers almost on the other, where it's
Oh
like
yeah,
the managers are going to be using more of the in-game stats, right? I mean, am I interpreting that correctly?
yeah, and like, and that see that's the other part is a lot of companies can like just stepping away from sports is a lot of companies do that for marketing, where they can look at all the data
Mm-hmm.
from previous years and kind of come to a conclusion on what their future looks like or what they should do to improve or what they're doing correct. Sports is hard because you can look at. I mean, obviously, you have to. It's it's all athletic based, right? You have to be talented. You have to be athletic. You have to have confidence. That's really hard to put a statistic to,
Mm-hmm.
because you can look at a player and go, here's his numbers. He looks good on paper, but that's really hard. It's hard to predict how he'll translate at the next level, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird mix between like just kind of, I don't know how to put it, but yes, you have to look at the stats, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to pick some bum who can't throw
Of course.
or can't pitch, whatever the scenario. But you also have to be knowledgeable in the sport itself. You have to notice really odd things on the field. Like you'll notice, like you see some weird things. Like the draft is coming up, right? They look at hand size. It's a weird thing to look at, right? Like why should I care if this man has below average sized hands when he just threw 35 touchdowns for whatever college? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. So what's interesting with that though is it sounds like there's some kind of innate talent and then like experience that gets, because if it was only left up to numbers, then the job of a general manager sort of would be relegated to a robot, right? Like an AI could totally do that job if it was only based on numbers.
It would be ridiculously easy. Like I bet it would be more competitive. And that's like, have you seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah. I've been thinking about that the whole time you've been talking.
That's all about like using analytics, right? That really, I mean, they suck now. It's the Braves, right? No,
Oakland
A's. The Oakland A's. They're not that good. They're really not that good, right? But like they took what every other baseball team was doing, right? They were really smart in game wise. They can pick out talent, right? And then they combined it with just the purely data driven side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be if you only used that side, right? If you only used the data driven side, you would have a billion people wanting to be sports managers, scouts, anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really easy to crunch numbers. If you get the side where you have to rely purely on your intuition, right? You're going to have nobody because that's very hard to do.
Right.
And that's where sports management kind of is, I would say right now, is you have to be good. Yes, you have to be good at looking at data, crunching numbers, but you also have to have this intuition for the sport. Like you have to be able to find a talent. And that's what's interesting about sports management is it's not, I mean, yeah, you have, okay, so I want to say STEM, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got your engineers really good at crunching numbers, right? You got your doctors that can diagnose things. Sports management's interesting because you get all that data, you get all that intuition, and you find your unique talent in being able to use each as a step stool, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like piggyback. They're both piggybacking on one another. You can't really have one without the other.
Right. And see, it's a crazy amount of ability that is such a kind of unique, like for most of human history, that either would have been put to use in a completely different way or not used at all. And we've created an environment where that type of mindset like just can flourish under these positions.
Yeah, and it's like, so we've always had, I mean, there's always been sports since the dawn of time, since humans. There's always been something where people are competitive. They compete. We have the Olympics, the Winter Olympics going on right now. So what's interesting, right, is we found this fun way for people to display their athletic gifts. And maybe in the past it wasn't as competitive, and now it's arguably more competitive than sports have ever been, like ever, right? And we've found a way to incorporate that and make a job out of it, like commercialize it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, right, the NFL, college football started before the NFL.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like the most national championships is an Ivy League school from the 1800s, right? I think it's, what is it, like Yale?
I think so, yeah.
I don't think it's Yale. That's not right.
Harvard or something.
It's one of the Ivy Leagues.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't really like a thing, you know? Like, it wasn't like people were dying to go to an Ivy League college football game. Now, people still aren't dying to go to an Ivy League college football game, right? But people will pay like thousands of dollars to go to a 60-minute game time Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
In such a short span, the sports industry has grown into something incredible. Like, it blows my mind.
Yeah. So 2 questions real quick. Why do you say that now is the most competitive that sports have ever been?
So it's funny. We've been talking about like stats and data basically this entire time. If you look at how competitive, the best example is really like the NBA. And they always have the joke that Michael Jordan played plumbers. So he's the best player. There's a bunch of no names. He's playing. And then you look now, and I don't want to say that it's that big of a gap between the past, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever, and like present. I want to say that it also has to do with like media influence. It's easier to know players. You know, you can follow any player you want on Instagram, you know, but like, it just seems like as sports have grown in popularity, even between the 80s and now, so that's what, 40 years ish. Like, it's just more competitive. Like, I think if I took LeBron James, he's 37 right now. He is old for an athlete, at least. And put him against, I don't know, Bill Russell, which played in like what, the 60s. He is wiping the floor, Bill Russell. I mean, just look at game film.
Yeah.
It's like you can just see it. It's there's video. There's data, there's stats to prove it. That's why I said that. It's so easy to, in today's world, compare the two and go, 2022, those are athletes compared to 40.
Yeah. So I did gymnastics, right, for a few years when I was younger.
Yeah.
And if you watch old gymnastics routines, like the same era you're talking about and maybe a little older, compared to gymnastics routines now, like both men's and women's, it is starkly different. I mean, the things that they were doing on the balance beam then compared to what Simone Biles does, crazy.
I don't know anything about gymnastics, so you're gonna have to like kind of point me in a direction. But is it more impressive? Because I feel like I always hear about like certain moves being banned.
Like in gymnastics?
Yeah, like in gymnastics, like that happened in the Olympics in the 80s. That's not happening now. You know, it's too dangerous.
Right. So in other words, you're asking because they were doing more dangerous stuff that they've toned back to make it safer.
Did it flip it, or have they adapted around those things that are banned and it's become even more impressive? Like,
well, so the first move that comes to mind that I know that was actually banned was it was I think it was like a 2.5 front flip where you ended in a forward roll. So you're kind of going neck first into the ground.
Yeah, so so
instead of ending up with your feet, you continue on about halfway more and then roll out of it. Which
I can see why that's dangerous, you know.
Right. But no, like an old balance beam routine, there's hardly any flipping.
Really?
There's hardly any upside down. It really was a balancing event. And now if you watch a Simone Biles routine, which I'm sure you've seen highlights or full routine, it's insanity. And she is probably the greatest female gymnast of all time.
Oh, for sure. Like, I'm a little biased, you know, she lives down the street, but
neighbors. But she does do things that a lot of other female gymnasts do as well. You know, she's not right. It's not like she's just crazy good. She puts them all together in a perfect way.
Oh yeah.
But the skills that she does are the skills that everyone else does, and they're more impressive.
And that's like, I said the NBA. Have you seen? This is kind of funny. Have you seen Babe Ruth?
I know the name.
You know the name. Babe Ruth is I want to say, a rather large man. He is not fit. He don't got a six pack. He's not, flexing his muscles. He's considered the greatest baseball player of all time by many, right? And then look at Barry Bonds.
Okay.
That is another baseball player from about 70 years after Babe Ruth played, right? That man is also considered one of the greatest baseball players of all time. That man, now he played in the steroid era, gives him a little bit of advantage, but that man is a specimen compared to Babe Ruth. If that doesn't show the athletic difference between the 1920s and the 2020s, I don't know what does. Because that's ridiculous, the difference.
So that brings me somewhat well to the second question that I have, which is, and I'm going to kind of adapt it to what I originally thought, is how much of the reason that sports is more competitive now, right? Yeah. How much of that reason is statistics, where now we can like say, oh, LeBron, when you dribble this tiny way, you're less likely to keep control of the ball, and like you can kind of zero in. And I think the easiest way for me to think of it is like running. Like I imagine running has come so far with just like we engineer shoes differently.
Yeah, there's actually, sorry, I'm a little bit off topic, but there's actually a shoe. Forgot who made it. I have a friend who runs cross country at DePaul. He's telling me about how there's this shoe that we have engineered that is so good, it gives such a big competitive advantage that it's banned. Like it helps you run so much that it is not allowed in competition.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a shoe.
Yeah. Like no. I mean, the people are fast, but it's no like innate talent that's part of it. It's just the shoe that gives it that much of an advantage.
Like if you put those shoes on, like you ran a mile. Let's say you ran a mile in. Let's be generous. You ran a mile in 6:50. Right.
That's generous.
You put those shoes on, you're running faster. No training. That's the kind of advantage it gives.
And see, that just is a testament. Yeah, with all of the cameras and scanning that we can do, we know exactly what a shoe needs to be.
And that's all like, yes, it has to do with the data. It also has to do with like how we've evolved kind of technology-wise.
Right.
Because we can be nitty-gritty, use all the slow-mo cameras we want to evaluate LeBron James' dribble. He's playing in a pair of shoes engineered for him specifically by Nike. Bill Russell is playing in a pair of Chucks. I can go buy those for $60. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the shoes obviously aren't going to make or break his NBA career, but
when stacked with all of the other little things
for sure. Like he can. I mean, I'm willing to bet this man's got his own personal guy who follows him around, records his film. He's got a trainer. Like it doesn't matter what level you're at, you can always get better. That's kind of his mindset. So,
so then, yeah, how much is it? Because it might be 100%, but how much of it is the statistics? But then also how much of it is like marketing? Because like your point earlier was kind of that there's more like basketball superstars, right? Like you kind of had Michael Jordan and you had some other famous names.
Like you had your big names, but now
now you've got LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, all
those
of
are
these.
those are like the superstars,
Right.
But then you can get your kind of baseline players like Brandon Ingram. He plays for the Pelicans. Do you know who that is?
Nope.
If it was the 80s, you probably wouldn't.
Okay.
Like, I guess if you're a Pelicans fan, which I don't even think they existed in the 80s, they didn't. You might know him, and you might, if you're a more dedicated NBA fan, you might know him. But it's not a name you're going to remember, right?
Right.
Now, let's say he retires 20 years in the future. I'm still following him on Instagram. I'm going to remember that name, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to remember players when you're constantly shown them.
Yeah. Because I do wonder, like, I was actually I heard about this somewhat recently, that Tom Brady was like a 199th pick or something in the draft.
Oh, yeah, I think he was 266.
Like
Don't quote me on that.
Like he was fairly low, right? And especially for someone considered.
Oh yeah, that's like he's starting to teeter-totter with not being drafted at all and maybe being a free agent.
Right. Which is crazy for someone who's considered by a lot to be like, greatest of all time and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I just how much of it is of this like recruitment process and this drafting process is players that are kind of brandable.
So when he was drafted, I would not say that man's brandable. But this kind of goes like full circle to what I said, where you can only be so good data wise, because he was picked like, I think he was like the second to last QB picked in his draft class, right? He didn't have the numbers per se to back that, but someone on that scouting team for the Patriots noticed something that was like, we should draft him this round. There's a possibility. Obviously, that scout guy is not going to go, listen, we're going to draft him 6th round. It's a steal. He's going to win 7 Super Bowls. He's going to have the greatest career of any NFL player. Like, we need to draft this guy.
Right.
But there's someone who can look past the data, look past his stats and go, this guy could be something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't know how to word it.
That's where that's where your job is kind of secure, right? Where it can't be automated, and that's where the human talent.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Over.
And I say it's competitive, and like there's a reason why that is, right? Because you still have the aspect where you can't be an idiot, you know?
Right.
You have to. There's so many things that come into sports management, right? Like I said, you have to crunch the numbers. That's what we've been talking about all the time. Stats and data have played a big role in the ever-evolving life of sports in general, right? Talked about sports betting, all of that, right? Then we talked about how good your intuition is for the game. Can you spot a talent? But there's so many other things, and that's why it's so competitive. Yeah, you can crunch numbers. Yeah, you can have intuition. You still have to have decent people skills.
Right.
You have to be able to communicate, talk, work with the team. That's basic. Most people have to do that. Your image, like, that is another thing. You have to be, you already said it, brandable. Right? Have you seen the owner of the Raiders? He has the most god-awful haircut you'll ever see. That man is ugly. But he's kind of brandable. Right, he's got a character. He's got
memorable.
Yeah, it's memorable. It's kind of a character, you know.
Right.
So you have to be brandable. You have to be likable. It's all these things where it's almost like American. You ever seen American Idol?
Yeah.
Everyone's seen American Idol.
What a great show.
Right. They have people that go on there. They can sing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're really good. They're really talented. But if that person doesn't look good on an album cover or in a music video, like how famous are they really going to be?
Yeah.
Like you have your Ed Sheerans and stuff like that, but
he's pretty ugly.
Yeah, he's not a very attractive man. No disrespect, he can sing, but you get what I'm saying,
yeah.
right? Like that's why it's competitive. Is I can't not only be smart, I have to be I don't want to say a character, but that's almost what it is, you know?
Right. So what's interesting is what you're describing why your job or your career field is competitive, right? Like the job of a sports manager you're describing, but it also sounds like you're describing the skills that a sports manager has to have to be good. So it's like the same reason you would get picked those are the things that you need to be picking other people for. Am I kind of saying that right?
It's like calling, what's the saying? The pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
It's like if I was like 20 years in the future managing the Houston Texans, someone picked me because of X, Y, and Z. Congrats, I am the big guy now. I'm going to go pick people for my team, people to help me run my organization because of X, Y, and Z. The same reasons I got picked. It's kind of redundant.
Yeah.
It's like you would think, why is it so hard to find a job why is more people not doing this if it's so copy and paste? But
no, yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird industry.
It sounds like just a unique set of skills that not a lot of people have.
And that's the crazy part is like, I've listed all these things you need to be able to do or would like to maybe have to be a manager in the sports industry. And all those things won't matter if I also don't know people,
Yeah.
right? It's really hard to start from the bottom.
Yeah.
That's why that's the only reason why I changed my major and kind of gambled um in this major is because I I know some people, right? Otherwise, I'm not like I can't bank on it, you know? So it's just a unique collection of things you have to kind of hope work out. So
Yeah. Well, so I mean, you say you know some people. Like, what does your career path then look like from here in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
so like I said, how we've been talking for a while now, but what I said, like one of the first things I said was that man, I just slipped my mind. Horrible. Um,
It's okay.
I know. I forgot I was gonna go with this. Basically, networking, right?
Right.
That's kind of the path I was going on, where you have to start. There he is. You have to start from the bottom. People have lofty goals. They want to work
Yes.
for
Yes.
so and so, right? Here's the thing. In an ideal, not an ideal, in a more realistic fashion, if you're starting this company, you're going to start really basic. You're not going to make a lot of money. You might not even work with sports. You
Right.
might work ticket sales. So you might be managing the people who are scanning tickets. And from there, it's up to you, maybe not to become really good at ticket sales. Yes, there's things you can kind of take away from that.
Sure.
But if you want to go higher in said organization, said club, said team, network with people while you're selling tickets. Who's your boss? Who's your boss know?
Yeah.
You know, who works for the food court? I'm right by them. I'm scanning tickets. They're selling food. Who's in charge of that? All right. They get to know me. They know these talents. They see what I do. I get hired. I move up, right? So now I'm in charge of all ticket sales that go to that stadium, concerts, football games, whatever, right? I've found my way amongst those people. All right. Who do they know? This guy is my boss. He's in charge of the stadium. He's friends with this guy at this stadium. He has, you know what I mean? It's all it's like a connect the dots. You start off really low. You might not make a lot of money. You might not get paid at all if you're in college. But it's a great way to network.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you have to start.
Yeah. You just have to be super proactive.
Yeah,
right?
like it's 24/7 job hunting. That sounds bad because you don't want to be working for someone and be constantly looking for a job, you know.
Right.
How would that company feel, you know what I mean? But it's kind of how it feels is you're constantly meeting people, and that's why people skills is so important. You're constantly meeting. They might not even be related to what you want to do specifically, but there's always a path to where you want to go through networking in the sports industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like a maze, you know? It's
right.
Like the dots.
Because you can take a dead end, or you can try and stay in one area because you think that guy is going to know the people that you want to know, but that's not really where you should have gone. Or
yeah, and for sure. But then you still know him.
Yes.
You know? And he still knows you, and that's like I said like ticket sales. My first example, you know, you're managing that. There's other ways you can go. Like let's say you get a job as an entry level equipment manager for some small school, right? Like Eastern Oklahoma University or some small school, right? That can also be a great opportunity because if you were to work for Oklahoma State, your job might be to move like set equipment, like the football team's shoulder pads from this to this. You know, you have one job. That's your only job. You have so much because it's such a big job. You know, you're a Power 5 conference. You're a Big 12 team. You know, you're a good Big 12 team this year. You have one job. You have to be good at that job. You work for Eastern Oklahoma, right? You have multiple jobs because they can't hire 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people to do equipment managing.
Right.
They're going to hire one guy in the athletic department to manage all the equipment, maybe do a little bit of budgeting, maybe do some field maintenance. So that's a great way to start is, yes, you're not making a lot of money. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're at a small college per se. but you get to dip your toes in multiple different things.
You get more opportunities.
You get more opportunities. So if you do that and you go, wow, I really like the budgeting for the sports organization, you start talking to people who also do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I would say that's the best way to go if you don't know exactly what you want to do in the sports industry, is you get an opportunity to kind of dip your toes in multiple different things.
Try it all out.
It's still high risk. It's a job. You're working for a sports team, but it's lower risk than working for Alabama under Nick Saban. You know?
Right, because there's going to be so many people that want to be there already. It's kind of a saturated.
Yeah, and it's more competitive. It doesn't have to be as competitive. You can find ways around. I mean, yes, competitive, but you can make it less competitive.
Yeah.
You can take what you're given and use it to your advantage.
Right. And see that, that just, again, it's so wildly different than what anything close to my career path looks like.
But it's not that much different.
No, you're right. The networking thing is always important.
That's unique
anywhere.
To it, but
well, it's always kind of a life rule. It's not what you know, it's who you know. But it is much more dramatic in your field than mine.
For sure.
But that starting low, working your way up. That's
it's like
universal.
The American dream.
Right, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You said that at the beginning, but awesome. Well, hey, one last thing I want to ask you about, because this podcast is going up on Thursday. The Super Bowl will then be Sunday.
Yes.
Do you have a pick? Do you have a favorite team? Do you have a pick?
Okay.
And are they different?
So, I like Joe Burrow as a person. Really, really good character. I like his energy. I like the Bengals. They're exciting to watch. I'm a Steelers fan. AFC North division rivals. I can't be rocking with the Bengals. It's just I wouldn't be a real Steelers fan. I get a lot of crap. So I have to say I'm going for the Rams. But I wouldn't be disappointed
either way.
Yeah. I just want a good game, you know?
Sure.
So, I could sit here and talk for another 20 minutes about matchups and stuff, but
that's okay. So you want the Rams to win. You also think they'll win.
See, this is interesting. The Rams are better on paper. They're better on paper, but the Bengals bring a lot of energy, and they've had a lot of upsets. They beat the number 1 seed Titans. They beat the number 2 seed Chiefs. So it's going to be closer than I would say.
Than it should look on. Than it looks on paper.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. You know, it's kind of hard to predict. Joe Burrow's going to do his thing. Jamar Chase is going to do his thing.
Well,
Rams are scary.
It was fun kind of to watch the Rams because they were the ones that knocked out the Buccaneers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was exciting.
They chose the Super Bowl now or bust. They spent all that money. They got every player they need. If you don't have that position, buy him. You know.
Yeah.
So they're a good team. We'll see.
Well, yeah, I see. I heard that these were some of the highest, maybe the highest ever Super Bowl ticket sales, like most expensive individual tickets.
I'm willing to bet, yeah, because
People are excited.
It's in a brand new stadium too, in LA. So, that's a good experience. Great halftime show.
Yeah, who's doing a halftime show?
Eminem.
Oh, really?
Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. Who else? Kendrick Lamar.
Oh wow.
Yeah, if you like rap music,
it's a good lineup.
You got every gen. You got the 90s with Dre. You got the early 2000s with Eminem. You got the 2010s with Kendrick.
Wow.
So, and Snoop Dogg's just there. Everyone loves Snoop Dogg. So.
Of course, you can't. Come on, what a legend. But
for sure,
that's a great lineup. But it'll be a good game. People are excited. So, but Bobby Olsen's got Rams. So, but hey, I do appreciate you coming on and talking. And we'll have you back another time for sure.
Don't know how much I answered your questions. I went a lot of rants, but
that was perfect. But thank you.